Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and today on the podcast, we are having another discussion about vaccines, but in this instance, we are talking about vaccine passports and the effect, the unintended consequence of vaccine passports on the coffee industry. Before we get started, if you're interested in doing our 6-week program for becoming a coffee consultant, please click the show notes. It's been a super successful 6-week program, and you can get details by clicking on the link in the show notes. Now, if you are on our mailing list, our recent mail out was about this subject, so you probably know what I'm going to talk about. If you are not on our mailing list, consider getting on our mailing list. What we do is every week an email goes out discussing at length a particular subject. And there's lots of links you can click on with evidence and fact checking and a whole bunch of stuff. I do a lot of work. It usually takes me a full day to write this email, but I think it's important because I try very hard to make sure that I present a very balanced argument about things. As you guys know, I have a background as a scientist. I studied genetics, and in the final part of my study, I was heavily focused on community medicine. So this is a subject that, while it's been a long time since I studied, this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart because I left science and the corporate world because of a lot of things that I disagreed with in the way that those kinds of institutions were run, and what was the oil that made them turn. So when I come to this conversation, I don't come to it with opinions about things that I just pulled out of YouTube or anything like that. I studied this. And so what I want to talk about today is the unintended consequences on our industry of these vaccine passports, and the idea that a lot of legislators around the world are saying that you will not be allowed to dine in or to sit and have a coffee in a coffee shop or have breakfast in a restaurant or in a coffee shop if you don't have a vaccine and you can't, or a vaccine exemption, which is what the vaccine passport is going to do. Now, this is not a conversation about whether you should or shouldn't get vaccinated. It's none of my business what you do. It's not my concern what you do. It is your job to be medically informed about what the right choices are for you. And as far as I'm concerned, as someone who's pro-choice and freedom about everything that exists in the world, with a tiny caveat of things there. But you should be making those decisions for yourself. When we as an industry are told that it will be up to us to police whether people have the right status on their vaccine passport before they can come into our cafes and into our places, our event places, our hospitality venues, whatever it is. That's what I want to talk about today. And the reason is because we have now been put in the middle of this situation by legislators who have given our industry the responsibility of having to now be the gatekeepers of who is allowed in and who is not allowed in based on a green screen in a vaccine passport. And it kind of removes the responsibility of the people who are making the laws to have to enforce these laws, which I'm not in agreement with them forcing people to do anything anyway. That goes against everything that I believe in. I believe that you should raise a society to be smart enough and considerate enough and empathetic enough. For some reason, I can't use my words today, but empathetic enough to care enough about themselves and each other to want to take care of the success of the society. And that's a very complex society, and it's a very complex way of doing things. But these matters are complex. And like with everything, this is not simply a black and white subject. The complexity of this lies in the grey of these vaccine passports, and our industry has been put right smack bang in the centre of the grey here, because what I see happening as an eventuality, and what I have heard of some instances around the world where the concierges or the hostesses or the host or the barista, whoever, is welcoming the person and checking the vaccine passports. They have been abused. They have been physically assaulted. They have been spat on. There are examples where people are looking to target hospitality venues who are enforcing these restrictions. And we obviously, in many societies around the world, have people who are looking to cause trouble right now and who are looking to ignite tension. And this is not a commentary on whether I think that's correct or not either. It's not for me to comment on that. What I want to bring to light is that we are now in the middle of something that we have no business being in the middle of. And we are now being forced as an industry to create customer acquisition plans that are based on your vaccine status as opposed to the kind of coffee that you want to drink or the kind of coffee that we want to offer you. And even for simply, let's say you decide as a business owner, we're just going to be compliant, we're going to check, and we're going to make sure only people who are vaccinated can come in. That's going to create tension for your regular customers who, even if they are vaccinated, are offended by the fact that you are segregating society that way. And on the converse of that, if you're somebody who turns around and says, no, we're not going to check if you're vaccinated or not, now what you've got is a situation where vaccinated people are uncomfortable about the fact that they think you're not keeping them safe. This isn't a good situation for any of us. And it tends to land the responsibility of sorting out the chaos to the small business owner and their team. And most baristas who are getting paid minimum wage don't get paid enough to have to deal with these kinds of scenarios. And at a moment in time when we as an industry are facing huge labor shortages across the world and a mammoth amount of challenges that are still coming from an economic perspective, this is not something that we need to pile on to the level of challenges, the huge challenges that we already have to deal with. And you might be thinking, all right then, smartass, what's your response and how do we fix this? I don't know, but what I do know is that we've got to have a strategy for workarounds. And as long as we can find a way to make sure that as hospitality venues, That's our job, is to make people feel welcome. As hospitality venues, if we can make sure that that everybody who comes in feels welcome, even if it means we have to make them feel welcome from a window that we've created and that's just on the street, or if we have to find a way to change the way that we do business so that we're not put in the middle. And I know of a community, I believe in Hawaii, who decided that they did not want to be the pawn for, that's PAWN for those in America who don't understand that was pawn in Australian. But if they didn't want to be the pawn for, or the puppet for the legislators, so they all just transitioned their business to takeaway only. There was no dine-in because they didn't want to be in the middle of what the legislators had mandated and what the community wanted. And they didn't want to differentiate the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. So despite this looking like it might be a very straightforward subject, it's not. It's super grey. And if you don't have a strategy for how you're going to handle this, I'm worried that you're going to end up in a situation, you and your staff, that has to deal with a situation that could escalate if you haven't prepared dialogue and a script and a strategy of how you're going to make sure that all your customers are treated equally. There is too much divisiveness out there as it is. People come to our venues, people come to our events, people come to everything that we do in hospitality so that they can feel joy and happy and invigorated. And this creates a divide, and we don't want to do that. Something to think about. If you need help with this, consider joining one of our mastermind groups where we have been talking about this extensively. I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.